Good evening and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 39. I'm Tristan Jutra. To my side, at my left hand, is
William Silver.
that guy. And pass it off, Will. You can do it.
And below.
Is me, Tasia Custody.
She's all by herself in the basement.
Hmm.
Well, we would have a fourth to round us out here because we thought Gray was going to be back. Gray Williams. Not sure. Hope he's okay. So you all going to have to just wait one more week at the most. Hopefully, we'll get Gray back to offer his tech insights to all the fun stories that we'll have then. But this week, we've got a few stories, a couple of which are about a certain bird-based social platform that we will get to in just a moment. Just before we get into that, though, Will, you guys doing okay there? You haven't been washed away yet with the biblical style floods we've been getting lately?
No. Just incidentally, a couple weeks ago, the first, what do they call them? Atmospheric rivers. Always sounds like something out of like Star Trek or something. But the first go around of the atmospheric rivers, we started getting really bad sort of overflooding on our drains. So my wife and I, in the middle of this torrential downpour, were taking brooms and trying to clear the gutters in the middle of the rainstorm because it was just like going all over the place like crazy. But we haven't been that bad. We've been very fortunate. There's many people, out in the Fraser Valley and the interior who've had a far worse go. So we're very fortunate.
And all sorts of highways still washed out, and just one wave after another keeps coming. So, Tasia, how about where you are down south? You got any rain at all, or would you like us to send you some?
You could send us some if you don't mind.
We would be more than happy to do so. What's it been like there the last couple of weeks? Are
Today
you?
was 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Um, Climate change is real. It's still, I know I'm in a desert, but it's
Mhm.
much hotter than it normally is for almost December 1st. But it's been nice, 70s and 80s. What are you gonna
It's.
do?
I
It's
mean,
been sun. I don't know what to tell you.
it's definitely better operating conditions for your porch pirates down there. So
It's ideal now because it's not too hot, you see.
perfect.
So now is when they're gonna come out. We gotta set up those fake packages and we
Yeah.
gotta get it on video.
Kitty litter.
Oh man. Yes. Used kitty litter.
That's your assignment. Get to it.
I know. I should.
All right.
Merry Christmas.
Speaking of getting to it, a little bit of follow up. A few weeks ago, we talked about the hit Netflix series Squid Game from Korea, and it inspired a number of spin-off type things, including various Halloween costumes for those who are on the case early. But YouTuber MrBeast spent, was it $1.5 million?
I thought it was
1.6.
3.
Was it that? Was it that much? It was millions of dollars. Yeah, $3.5 million to produce a recreation of Squid Game with 456 recruits. I don't think anyone died, but they basically did non-lethal versions of these games, and they were competing for $456,000. Of course, there's all sorts of hot takes about that on the web. Some people feel like they're missing the whole point of the moral of Squid Game, which it was capitalism all along. It's that whole pursuit that makes us turn our backs on our fellow human beings and just squabble over each other for the sake of the almighty dollar. And then there's the whole notion that, wait a second, is this even right what's being done? It's just ripping off someone else's intellectual property. So Tasia, as a longtime creator in various media, including YouTube, what's your initial take on this?
I love MrBeast and I love this idea. He has been working on this for so long. Like, it actually got pushed because he's such a perfectionist when it comes to certain production things that he really wanted to make sure they had like these amazing set build outs. Um, and the cool thing about this is it's like anybody could have applied. It's not like it was him and his rich friends effing around and, keeping all this money, it would cost all these millions of dollars. He's, yes, he's a content creator, but he's a philanthropist. I don't know if he even describes himself as one, but the amount of money he gives away to regular people and the amount of charitable work he does every single year in many of his videos is absolutely staggering. And I would actually say put his charitable donations and work up against any big known celebrity and he would blow them out of the water with what he actually does. And so, people just, riding him and on his case about, oh, you missed the point of Squid Game and well, you missed the point of what he's actually doing. He gave somebody $456,000 and they got to play a fun game and be in his YouTube video and meet him and a bunch of other people. Like it's it's incredible to me. So it's just like, and then I saw like a lot of other creators that are like smaller creators like me were all getting snippy and like pissed because, they were just like, oh, sure. Well, he's already this big, you know, YouTuber and it's easy for him to. It's easy? No, it's not. It cost millions of dollars and a crazy production crew and months to put together. Like, it, there's, even with the money he would make from ad revenue on this video, it probably cost him money still to do it. And even if it didn't, like, who really cares, But it's just like, if you actually think about that, and it's incredible because before we went live, he had tied the record for like most subscribers gained in a month, and tied a record on like fastest view growth. So like, I don't know if he's like on a video. So I don't know if he's surpassed that now in the time that we've gone live because I haven't checked the stats in a couple hours, but it's just incredible and it's so well deserved. And this guy just gets it, man. Anybody that's knocking it is like jealous or something. Like, just let the guy live. You don't have to be like a keyboard warrior and be like, you're missing the point. Is he? Because he just gave away a bunch of money. Again.
Fair enough. One of the points that was raised as well, that just sort of a sign of the times, is that this video, I think within the first week, had as many views as the Squid Game series did, which kind of puts things into perspective. Squid Game being one of the most popular Netflix series ever, and people, I think, lose sight sometimes of how large the YouTube economy really is. Similar to the podcast economy as well. You have people like podcast hosts like Joe Rogan who are getting hundreds of millions, if not billions of downloads per month for their podcasts. Whereas a lot of mainstream news outlets like CNN and the like, they're lucky to get, viewership of, a few 100,000 for any given program. So the dynamics have really changed, but a lot of it's sort of hidden, especially when it comes to podcasts, because those metrics aren't so visible. But when it comes to YouTube, you can see right there how many people have viewed a given video and how many have given it a thumbs up. Fortunately, we don't see the thumbs down anymore because YouTube's trying to protect people's feelings, and that's a whole other story, because it can be hard on creators. But I'm still not clear on that whole thing, because the creators would still see the thumbs down anyway behind the scenes. But it just puts into perspective like the sheer scale of channels like this. And MrBeast is one of the top, if not the top YouTuber at the moment, right, Tasia?
Yes. Yeah, I think he's number 2, but again, he might have just surpassed. So he already has a big audience, yes, but this is also showing the power of the fact that even though he already had a big audience, like this one video alone has helped propel him to almost like 1 million extra subscribers, which is staggering. Like, it's just insane to think about. And, for those knocking it and saying, well, he just took another idea and then that's what YouTube is. I don't know what y'all have realized, but like, it's literally, besides, helpful tutorials and whatever, there is a whole thing, and I can't remember exactly what they call it. whatever like social thing it's called, but it's basically where you jump on a trend and you figure out how to make a video on what's
Mhm.
trending so that you'll spike in views and you'll spike in this. The difference with him is he's able to do it repetitively. And I think that's what people get jealous about, is because if you just do it one off, there's really not a long term benefit. So like if a small channel like mine does it one off, I capitalize on something that's trending and I get good views on like one video. That's not like a sustainable growth thing for a channel. The thing that he's doing with this is he seems to keep doing it. Like
He's got the
all
formula
his
figured out.
yes, like all his videos are quite popular, obviously, but there's ones like these that'll come out, a few a year that he just manages to keep sustaining that. And come on, I have yet to see. I don't know if you guys watch this video or whatever, but like whatever you think of him or of this, it's just the amount of work that went into this. Like I just can't get over it. It's ridiculous in a good way. Like so, kudos.
Will, again, as someone who creates quite a lot more in the audio space than anything, how do you feel about this? This example of trend jacking, which Tasia's referring to. Sometimes it's news
Thank you.
jacking,
Yes.
and if you created something that you spent lots of time and money, in Netflix's case millions of dollars to produce, how would you feel about someone else sort of basically quote unquote ripping off the idea and making their own thing and making all sorts of additional money and notoriety and the like from your idea? What about the producers and the creators of Squid Game? They don't get a cut of this action. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when something becomes a cultural phenomena, it's sort of outside of your control. I mean, we saw this, well, we, uh, many years ago with like Star Wars. Like it was all the rage in 1977. It was the hottest thing. Bill Murray did a Lounge Lizard version of the song on SNL. I
Star
mean,
Wars.
yeah, I mean there's all sorts of parodies and spin-offs and I think people, to Tasia's point, I guess there's a monetary thing involved here, clearly with YouTube, but I mean this is tale as old as time. I mean people have been riffing off stuff and doing other versions of the same property. Having said that, as you say, as a creator, as someone who um, creates graphics but also music, um, and Tristan, you know this, that I'm sort of following your philosophy of that creators deserve to get paid, and that's not just YouTube. It's if you're jacking a video game or a DVD back in the day, ripping it and just watching it. There's someone who deserves to get paid for that artistic material, and it's nice to get things for free. I love to get things for free, but at some point, I think that art doesn't happen without funding. As Tasia said, MrBeast spent $3.5 million. I mean, there are some reasons why people like his stuff. He clearly has quality and puts money into it. It's not just he drew some backdrops on a sheet and threw it up on a wall and had some people do a game in front of it. He actually spent time and money. I mean, you guys know there's production involved. There's grips. There's multiple cameras. There's sound. There's someone doing audio mixing. There's someone editing all this stuff. Like, is you could say he ripped it off, but boy, did he put a lot of work into ripping it off. I mean, you go try to go do it. I mean,
Exactly.
so I mean, to say that there's no art in it is ridiculous. Now, having said that, there is this line. It's like you're playing off something, you're paying tribute to it, but you're making money off it. It's not your intellectual property, so it's tough. But it's not like he didn't create something; he did. So
And he's not passing it off as the original either. That's one
no,
of the one
no,
of the key
he's
things as
it's
well.
an homage. I mean, and this is part of the thing is people love stuff, they'll go and do it. There's people who do fan films of Star Trek all the time, and it's they're saying it's a fan film. There's people who self fund $1 million Star Wars movies that they make themselves in the the desert with some friends. I mean, those things have been funded on what are those funding sites?
GoFundMe.
GoFundMe and stuff like that. So, I mean, are those people ripping off Star Wars? I mean, they're just huge fans that want to play in that world. So, I get what people are saying, but at the same time, to your point, Tristan, he's not trying to pretend that he is the Squid Games.
I, I know I don't know about you, but I'm finding it hard to concentrate at all with a bare chested Bill Murray singing lyrics to the theme from Star Wars in the background here with a shiny jacket. If you, we'll put a link to this SNL segment from the '70s in the show notes because that was a great deep cut there. Will,
It's a classic.
yes, and again an homage. So
Yeah.
not pretending to be the real Star Wars.
No.
All right. So yeah, I think MrBeast is an interesting case because he has just gotten so huge, and to your point, Tej, has really seemed to crack that algorithm nut for YouTube and figures out to he's got such a large audience, but still gets uh, enough interest in videos even from outside his subscribers that it just becomes this machine. And there are people that serve the creator economy. People like he's done all sorts of joint ventures, making products and merchandise and whatnot. There's a couple podcasts out there. I think one is called The Creator Economy, if I'm not mistaken. That it's done by a few people that work with MrBeast and others to figure out ways to help them build their empires and ultimately not rely entirely on YouTube views, because as we know, social platforms can be fickle mistresses, and if you cross some line in terms of service, whether real or imagined, it could impact your ability to make your living. They could demonetize given videos, they could suspend your channel or even cancel it outright. So the more you can do to build and maintain your audience outside of the major social platforms, however possible, and develop other streams of income is it's important. But things like this just get him into the zeitgeist. And they had however in the first 2 days over 50 million views, and within the first 4 or 5 days I think we're at 127 million views now. So good for him. Yes, well.
I was gonna say, just as maybe another quick example, there's a channel called Ordinary Adventures, not 85 million subscribers, but they have a few 100,000 subscribers. They're Disney bloggers, they're cruise bloggers, and the one of the guys behind it is actually the guy who does Slash Film, Peter, I forget his last name, but and he just understood how to make videos and how to make content. And they went to 200,000, surpassing Disney bloggers who've been doing it for 10 years, right? And there were a lot of people who would say things or comments, and there was a lot of people who were hating on them. Oh, well, you cheated somehow. He just knows how to do it. He's been a blogger and doing podcasts for 15 years. Like, he just understands what people want to see and how to target his content. Don't hate on him because he does it better than you. But at the same time, I understand these people, it's their livelihood, and they see someone doing better than them, they get jelly. But I mean, just say, oh my God, he's so good, I should talk to him and see what he does, or how do I, how do I figure out what he did? Not sort of like start hitting and
Exactly.
talking shit in forums about people or stuff in forums. Sorry,
I
sorry.
regret to inform you that if you use the word jelly again on this live stream, we're going to have to demonetize you.
Is it owned by somebody?
No, it just
Tim Hortons?
contravenes momentous terms of service. um, moving on to some other follow-up. Tasia, you had an update for us on Project Starline, which was one of the neat demos from Google I/O. Was that back in June, taking video conferencing telepresence to the next level? Could you give us a little recap of what Project Starline it was, and what's the recent update from Google?
Yeah, so Project Starline is it was announced at Google I/O this year, and it's basically, as you can see there, like almost like a little booth that instead of video chatting, like we are now, we would be seeing each other in 3D model compositions. So their aim was to make video chats more lifelike. So, we're all connected from all over the world, especially when COVID hit and we couldn't travel anywhere. it was really important, and to have this type of technology. So you guys might remember I was like blown away by the concept of it, and they really just played like a quick little demo of some people talking to each other through these booths. Each participant kind of has to be in one, and there's all kinds of cameras around, and that's what makes the 3D composition. um, but what they've done since then is they've expanded it to more Google offices. So like it's just kind of still internal testing right now. But they've discovered what they're, according to them, some very interesting stats, if you will, that they've figured out via this. So like, one of the stats is that, 50 people displayed up to 50% more non-verbal behaviors. So whether that was like nodding or like blinking or shaking your head, because you felt like you were more in person in a way,
Mhm.
which was what I'm doing right now. 40% more hand gestures, they said. Which, could you
Eyebrows as
imagine
well.
me?
Mhm.
Eyebrows, hand gestures. um Interestingly, no, they said that about 30% of participants had a better recall of things that they had talked about if they talk to somebody over Project Starline, as opposed to like your traditional boring meetings or whatever. And that's probably because when you're in person with somebody, you have more of that connection, which also led into, they said, I think it was 15% of participants had like better eye contact. So they're, by the way, to get all these stats, like think about this, they're monitoring all of that. So like there's cameras monitoring like your eye tracking movements like within the Project Starline booth. So like I just kind of wanted to bring that up because A, I think it's really cool, and B, I just think, whew, if y'all think we are being tracked with our phones now, like they are tracking your eye flutters and movements and exactly where you're looking at the screen. Am I making eye contact with you? And they're able to do this because you're not just looking at like a camera. Like you have to picture like you're looking at me across from you or you across from me physically in 3D, almost like in person.
Yeah.
So anyway, they've tracked all this, and I thought that was very cool. There's really not too much more info yet on how it's going to expand in the future, but definitely some really, really cool updates and cool testing that they're doing internally. So like I'm excited to see this. And my hope is that it moves a bit externally, even if it's something like, what a cool marketing play. If they did something cool at some of the flagship stores or something around the world, where you could sit in a booth or something and have a little trial with somebody. Like, I just think that would be so cool. So, anyway, because how cool would that be? You could connect with a stranger at like a flagship store somewhere else in the world, and you're in New York or you're in LA or you're somewhere, and it's like, oh, cool. Look at this.
Connecting with strangers, you say. It reminds me of Expo 86 back in 1986 when you were very young. They had these video periscopes all over the expo grounds, and you could hit buttons and connect with the different periscope units around, and try and meet girls. It didn't work all that well, but the interesting thing about the couple more stats from this update is that they said people performed approximately 30% better in a memory recall task. So remembering more details from the conversation. And as you mentioned, Tasia, they focus 15% more on their meeting partner based on that eye tracking info. And that's what Google does best, is tracking data, right?
Amazing.
So I guess I guess part of it is that you like you said, that you feel more presence of the other person as opposed to just like staring at yourself, which we tend to do when we're on Zoom calls and Skype calls and the like. So whether or not they're able to miniaturize this system down to make it
Right.
eventually a consumer product, I think will be the real test. Because if anything they can do to make this whole type of interaction uh, more lifelike, more telepresence like Cisco and others have been working on for the better part of 10, 12 years, the better. But if they can bring that from the enterprise down to the homes, would be fantastic. Will, how realistic do you want your video conferencing to be?
Um, I don't need it that realistic, but to be honest, I mean, it's pretty spotty right now. I mean, it works pretty well, but we all let certain things go and get used to certain things, and At its worst, it almost becomes like walkie talkies. Like, this is what I think over. So
We have to get
uh,
better at talking over each other. Keep going.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I mean, part of that is just people having different computers and people having different cameras.
And
We know that
lag.
well. Yeah, lag, uh, bandwidth. There's a bunch of people at the last place I worked that when we first were telecommuting, that they were that they had to upgrade their bandwidth, they had to upgrade their cameras, all sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, I like the idea of there being sort of a standardized commercial unit that maybe could give more of a level playing field to these interactions. But I don't necessarily need like something out of Star Trek where it's a hologram, or Star Wars where it's a little thing in my palm. But yeah, I mean, I'm fine with 2D video, but I guess if it helps the connection and people remember things better, then there is a benefit there.
You raise a good point. A lot of what these sorts of tech demos are really riding on is super reliable, high bandwidth connections,
Yeah.
where it's like fiber everywhere. You're not on wireless or anything like that. No one's running the microwave to interrupt a Wi-Fi connection. It's all the sorts of things that streamers and people doing video conferencing battle every single day. And so in a tech demo, you can have that high bandwidth stream to do the
Yeah.
all the analysis and sending the 3D models and all that kind of thing. It's fascinating, the whole notion of it, just the fact that it recreates a 3D model of you as opposed to simply sending a video signal. That's kind of wild. So definitely we'll keep an eye on this space to see how that develops going forward. So thank you for that update, Tasia.
Guys, I just thought of a business idea for us.
Here we
And
go.
just hear me out. And if anybody's watching this, don't steal it because it's gonna be good.
We're talking to you, MrBeast,
Yeah.
because we know he's
Do you
watching.
guys do you guys remember internet cafes?
Oh yeah.
Project Starline cafes.
Oh.
Because people's internet is not reliable. We've got the reliable internet. And we open cafes around the world that have all the little booths, and people would just be like, oh my God, let's go. And like they would go and like set up times to call each other. But so instead, it's like the new age. It's like old is new again.
There you go.
Full circle.
Guys, I'm just
Yeah.
the ideas. Okay.
You are.
I'm just the ideas. So now it's off to you.
If there's one thing we know about the current zeitgeist is people love going places where there are other people.
Exactly.
We're planning for the future, for
Yes.
the Omega variant. That's later. It's in a couple months.
Am I the only one who every time they hear Omicron thinks of the Transformer named Omicron?
Oh no, it sounds like a crazy name of like a tech startup.
Yeah.
But they did that to be like, so they wouldn't offend anybody.
Oh, so they skipped new and they skipped she. So NU
Yeah.
and XI, the two of the Greek letters that were supposed to be
Yeah.
next, because
those are common last names and such, and so they don't want people to be like, well, shit, man, you associated me with a deadly disease.
just to be clear, the she specifically is the last name of a certain world leader who's
Oh yeah.
Well,
and
yes.
who's, in spite of their power in the world, tend to be pretty fragile about certain issues. But we're not going to name any names there because we're full supporters of the party.
Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh.
Dude, you're going to get demonetized.
Hey, I didn't call the person Winnie the Pooh. I was just singing a song that was in my head.
I guess we have to be monetized first before we can get demonetized,
There you
right?
go.
That's a long ways away. Yeah, so, and leave it to the Greeks to have two letters for the letter O, basically Omicron, and then later on Omega. But that's at least weeks away. We've got a few other letters to remember between there. So moving on, getting closer to one of our main stories today, a little bit of Twitter news before the big Twitter news. There was a bit of a policy update. Twitter bans sharing private images and videos without consent. But apparently this policy does not apply to public figures for the most part, but there are exceptions. So this, I think I would file this in the how is this not already a policy department? You would think that communication between private individuals would remain private, and if you were to breach that trust, that it would be a breach of the terms of service, but maybe they just never went that far. Apparently, things like revenge porn and doxing and whatnot were already against Twitter's terms of service. But now this is broadening that scope a little bit more. So, Will, you and I could be sharing some stuff privately in Twitter direct messages, also known as DMs. And then if I, said something maybe compromising about Tasia, and then you were to share that publicly, your account could get suffer some consequences, even get suspended and whatnot, depending on the severity of the call. Now, Tasia, being the subject of our potential sensitive DMs, how do you feel about that policy? Are you in favor of it? Should we be punished?
Yeah. I mean, like, if I want to take a pee on the beach, you don't have a right
that escalated quickly.
To like post. I've never actually done that.
Dude, go on.
I should try that, but I've never actually done that. But I'm just saying, if I'm doing whatever, like, you shouldn't have the right to post that. It's me. But I always just thought that was already a thing that we couldn't do. You know what I mean? I was really confused about this, and I don't know if it was just kind of like them trying to take the news away from something else, or what, because, talking about sharing people's private information, well, you couldn't do that anyway.
Yeah. So
I was a bit confused, but I understand the timing because it was strategic on their part.
Yeah, there's a Twitter Whitecaps account. I'm a Whitecaps fan.
Vancouver Whitecaps, the soccer / football team.
Football?
Yes.
Football.
And there's a person who tweets a lot. I won't use his name, but he's a bit of a controversial figure, and sometimes people reach out to him, and he'll take screenshots of it and put it like in tweets. And players have reached out to him like, hey, why are you doing this? Because he can be a bit of a troll. And he's posted pictures of this tweet of the player saying like, hey, leave me alone, blah, blah, blah. And he'll be like, what a jerk, haha, he can't take some negative feedback. And
now were these public tweets, like at replies, or were they DMs, direct messages?
They were DMs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So they would be
DMs. He'll take screenshots of DMs and then share them on his main Twitter account and make fun of people.
So Sir Tweets a Lot might get caught up in this policy.
Yeah.
Yeah. People do this all the time. Like on Instagram, I see this all the time, Will, where like someone will be like, well, I have the receipts, like whatever, you're gonna come for me. And then they'll take a screenshot of their DM interaction, which I do have to say, if someone's being a dick, like you're just like, so it's kind of like, oh, don't you want to burn them at the stake, if they're being a dick? But that happens all the time on Instagram. I actually haven't seen it too much on Twitter, but I guess that protects people more, but I don't know. My thing is go on the guidelines of like, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
In general, private or publicly, just be a nice person. Then we don't have to worry about any of this stuff. It doesn't matter.
Tasia, have you heard of Twitter?
I mean, no. What's Twitter?
Have you heard how people behave on Twitter?
I know, I love it so much.
Okay, so hold your mug up again and your lovely shirt there. So sandwiched in between our Twitter stories, we're wearing our Twitter-related merch. Now, so you've got the beautiful Twitter blue logos there. Will's got Marvel because he missed the memo. Do you all recognize this, what I'm holding up, which is great for those listening? Do you remember what this little thing is?
I need a minute, but we're live, so I don't have a minute. Shoot.
It's okay. It'll give my dad a chance to have a snooze while he's listening.
So familiar, Will.
Looks like a face or an owl.
Yeah, it's a little face type thing.
Googling.
So here's a hint. The predecessor to the outline of a human, and before that, the egg.
Chicken?
No, this is what this,
Outline of a human.
well, currently, if you don't have a custom avatar on Twitter, if you haven't uploaded a photo or some image for your avatar, but
Uh-huh.
now you're just like an outline of a person. Before that, you would be an egg. People used to joke about Twitter eggs all the time.
Yes,
Before
I
the
remember
Twitter
that.
egg, it was this.
What?
It was just the random derpy face with one big eye, one little eye. It's a capital O and a little O
No.
with with a an underscore in between. That's the original egg.
Guys,
That's how old I am. I got a shirt
we
with
should all get matching shirts, but like we could be one of each. Like you've got that one, like one of us, Will, me, or you could have like the egg, and then one of us could just have
Yes.
like the outline of the
yeah,
person.
and we could wear that for our next Twitter news. Exciting stuff. All right. So
Half a
now,
minute.
now exactly. So Tasia, what else happened in the Twitterverse this
Well, are we
week?
gonna go with the big guns or what? I mean, bury the lead here.
Yeah.
So Jack Dorsey has stepped down as the CEO of Twitter, effective immediately as of what, yesterday?
Oh, I didn't give 2 weeks notice. Come on.
Nope. It was like that was it. And then he, just like he started at Twitter, he ended it at Twitter with a tweet. He will remain on the board through a bit of 2022 till I think their shareholders meeting or something in 2022. But yeah, I mean, my thing with this is because he's been in and out of that role, which I think people forget a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
He
so
kind
he
of got
stepped.
forced out originally, like what, in
He
2008,
did.
2009 or so. Yeah.
He did. And then he went back a few years later. And then was it last year they challenged him again? There was, I can't remember what it was, but there was an internal challenge again and he
I
was
think some
safe.
activist investors were getting on his case, being
Yes.
because he's still the CEO of Square, which has
Yeah.
become by some accounts even more of a growing concern and more successful than Twitter in some respects, being right
Yes.
in the heart of the fintech space, and overlaps with Jack's interest in crypto and especially Bitcoin. So I think
Hmm.
some activists, investors, and maybe even some board members are a little concerned that his focus was a little too split. And maybe they had some unspoken arrangement where, okay, just give me some time. I got to get some things. Let's get done. Let's get Twitter Blue out the door, and then I'll see my way out.
Right. Exactly. And he kind of pitched that as, he's been working very hard behind the scenes to have a company that doesn't have to be founder led. He doesn't like founder led companies. This is according to his statement. And, he thinks that's kind of limiting in terms of company success and success for the consumer and all of that kind of stuff. So, interesting, but, Square is worth like over double what Twitter is worth at this point. Like you mentioned, he's expressed huge interest in, the crypto world. So it's going to kind of be interesting to see what he's doing next because I don't think in that type of position you're stepping down without already one foot in the other thing. And the other thing being probably multiple things for him, with Square and crypto and all this kind of stuff. So it's interesting. The coolest part is that is it Parag? Parag, is that how you say his name? Who's now the CEO?
He was the former CEO,
He,
Parag Agrawal.
yes,
Yeah,
well, he was the CTO, but
yeah,
before that, like he started at Twitter as an engineer,
cool.
and it's just so cool because, and this was Jesus, probably 2011, 20. I mean, so this is not like, oh, it was last year. He was no, like this is over some time, and he worked his way up to CTO, and now he is the CEO of the company. I mean, that's a pretty cool story, I think. But I'm the one with all the Twitter swag and might be a bit biased.
Do you do you still have any little birds inside Twitter that have any perspectives on this that have been shared with you?
No, my little birdie that hooked me up with all my swag is no longer with Twitter. Um, I do have a feeling though, I think that's we're only, of course, getting part of the story. I think some of it also might have to do with just the fact that like these companies take so much heat, and he's had to go in front of Congress multiple times already, along with the other big guns, and, answer to privacy concerns and data concerns and all of these things. So, not that he's out of the woods because, Square, we could have the same argument for any of these companies, but I that probably has to get old at some point, defending yourself. And again, I will say, I do think of all the big evil companies out there. I do think Twitter has been making good steps, uh, for the past few years now, of
Mhm.
trying to curb some of this misinformation and hate speech and violent rhetoric and crap. Um, so I know it's funny to, we joke about them all the time and like, well, have you been on Twitter? Like people are terrible, but like they have, I mean, they banned a sitting president. Like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in play here that like, Zuckerberg would never, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just stuff like that. Like, I don't know why I feel like Twitter gets ridden harder than Facebook or some of the other ones. So I don't know if maybe he was just over that too and some of that played into it, but
Yeah,
maybe he is just a great egoless guy. Okay, maybe that's just the rhetoric we'll go with. But I think there's probably multiple things in play.
I think you make a good point about him kind of being over the scrutiny part. Like it's no like Jeff Bezos did the same. He stepped down as CEO, let Andy Jassy take over, and who was the head of AWS, I believe. And now he still has his board seat, and but he's not the guy that has to go in front of Congress anymore. Same kind of.
Exactly.
And Facebook has done some reorganizing as well. I'm not sure if Mark's actually going to ever give up the reins, but Sheryl Sandberg had been the human shield for a while when it comes to Facebook. But with a lot of these platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube to a certain extent, they're always walking that fine line between preserving, the free speech, even though they're private companies, they are large enough that they become the public forum, and while still trying to clamp down on misinformation and hate speech and calls to violence and all that sort of stuff. The challenge being is sometimes they overstep their bounds a little bit and end up like removing stories that actually have some basis in fact, but are inconvenient at the time, but they don't want to get in trouble with people that may not be in favor of those stories, like the Hunter Biden laptop thing for one example. Before the last U.S. Is at the 2020 U.S. election, like that got censored all over the place. But it turned out there was actually some fire where there was that smoke. Could that
Mm-hmm.
have affected the outcome of the election? Who knows, right? So it's that. Yeah, I mean, you can't win. You're going to get it from both sides, and I think in most cases these companies are trying to do the best they can. It's easy to say they've got these evil schemes, and some of them, they have schemes for sure, but they think they're doing
Yeah.
the right thing ultimately, and that becomes a matter of perspective, and the market will dictate based on how
Yeah.
popular their platforms become. So, but definitely. The fellow who's taking over, he has his work cut out for him, and there's another article we'll link in the show notes that describes some of the issues, including the free speech ones and censorship ones and otherwise that he'll have to navigate. And I'm sure Jack is happy to be done with that. He can go and
Yeah.
spend time trimming his beard now or something. Will, do you have any thoughts on this thing? Is it kind of like matter to you at all?
I think you guys have summed up
Mhm.
most of my thoughts on it. The only thing I would add to it is that we're critical, obviously from time to time, and I think general society can be critical of these platforms and these people. It's got to be a weird experience that you start off doing a business and then you basically become an essential public service that has to abide by rules that you never intended to be involved with in the first place. So, like, it's sort of like I often used to say to people, like, Twitter or Facebook is like a nightclub. They don't have to, you don't have a
Yeah.
right to be there. They can choose to have you there or not. If they just walk through and they're like, I don't like the way you look, your glasses are stupid, you're out of here. No, I have a right to be here. No, you don't. I own the place. You're gone. Like, so all these people who get mad about deplatforming, it's like it's not a public government organization that
Mhm.
you have a right to be there, and that so it's got to be this weird space to be ahead of one of these companies where it's like people just assume that it's their born right to be on the platform and to act the way that they want to, and that they have an inalienable right to be there and
Mhm.
do what they want. So it's got to be a strange balance to sort of put these rules in place that government's telling you to do, but you just started off to try to make some bucks off of, selling Cialis or something like that. So, I mean, that that's my thoughts on it's got to be a strange place to wake up and go, what was I doing 10 years
For
ago and
sure.
how did I
Yeah.
get here?
And I guess that's a good problem to have. You become a victim of your own success. And I think Twitter has an oversized impact when compared to its actual numbers, because their monthly active users are, like, last time I checked, it was only around 350 million users, maybe a bit higher since then. But the thing is that their reach is so much bigger. Their reach is like over 1 million people daily, because so many of the people that are the most active on Twitter, and it's only like a very small percentage of people on Twitter that are responsible for most of the activity. You think about it, it's politicians, celebrities, athletes, and journalists, and they all feed on each other, right? So there all this stuff is ending up on blogs, news sites, TV shows. You got morning DJs talking about what people are talking about on Twitter. It's like the actual reach is far greater than its raw
Mhm.
numbers might dictate from its user base, which has a bit of a distorting effect on public discourse in a way, because people confuse the discourse on Twitter with actual real life. And if you look at how, the sort of things that people say and the sort of extreme views you have on all sides of the spectrum, or both ends of the spectrum, it's like, that's not the way that most people think or talk. So it's again, that is part of that weird kind of situation that they find themselves in. The other part of it as well is that when you get to a certain size, and I think this more applies to Facebook, because they're just so huge, pushing 3 billion monthly active users at this point, is that, and this is why you have the public officials paying closer scrutiny to them, is at what point are you a de facto public service or a de facto utility, because you own so much of the public conversation? And what is the actual likelihood of a competitor coming in and being able to do that kind of thing that you do? Now, one can argue, well, the market's taking care of itself. Look at TikTok. It came out of nowhere. I mean, it was years and years as Musically, and then got bought by Chinese company ByteDance, and then rejigged, and it's huge. But TikTok is not Facebook. TikTok is a very different beast, and people aren't having normal conversations on there. It's mostly just an entertainment platform. It's not really like a social networking platform. So at what point do these platforms have a responsibility to ensure that voices are heard, as long as they're obeying the law, even if what they have to say may be distasteful? And I think that is that large thing. Unless we want to be nationalizing these things or making them part of the UN, I don't know if anyone wants any of that, because that's going to be a bad time.
But part of the thing is
Mhm.
like, and I do understand that private business has to keep public concerns in mind. But when you
Mhm.
start becoming, like you say, a de facto utility, I mean, they're funding it themselves, or it's being funded through operations that you're doing. It's not like government funding or anything like that, but yet they're responsible for keeping
Yeah,
those in mind. And you could say that certain businesses do have that responsibility, like McDonald's can't,
gotcha. Yeah.
but
Uh, hold the phone. I've got a caller. Caller on line one. Do you have something to add to this whole notion of social platforms as de facto, public utilities, based on their impact on the public discourse? What say you on the reach of Twitter, Facebook, et al., and the implications of Jack Dorsey stepping away?
So that's a nice light topic to come in on, isn't it?
yeah.
Everyone is
I'll be
Gray
damned.
Williams, back from the
I'll be
dead,
damned.
also known
Holy
as
crap.
Teton.
I just finished up with my class at BrainStation, and I realized I had a couple minutes left, and so I decided I'd see if I could pop in. Having a heck of a time with the new MacBook M1 Max. Not wanting to get onto Restream. I have no idea why.
Will,
So
cancel
strange.
your order. Will, cancel your order. They're lemons. They're all lemons.
But I have an M1 iPad here, and it's sitting right beside me. I'm like, I'm going to see if that works, and here we are. It's interesting. Like Twitter, for me, I abandoned the platform entirely for 5 years due to he who shall not be named being on the platform. And I decided when he came back,
Will
I'm going to
Silver?
come back.
I'm not on there.
Not
So
anymore.
I decided I would come back, and it's my social network of choice right now. And honestly, like Jack's inaction throughout that entire process was something that I found to be quite disturbing. The idea that this was perhaps something that needed to be of the public record. A publicly traded company, but basically taking on the idea of like the things that we create need to be kept for the Library of Congress. Yes, they do, but you didn't have to give that man a platform. And I found that to be quite disturbing. So it seemed like they kind of wanted to play both sides of the fence here. So either you are going to be, something of the public record, at which point should you be accountable to perhaps regulation? Very, very interesting to think. Now, here's the thing: is if Twitter was accountable to, say, for example, the U.S. government at that time, what would that have looked like? Looking at this even further, which government are you then beholden to? If you are a multinational corporation, like how do we go about essentially governing these groups that are multinational, that don't actually have skin in just one game? They're everywhere. So that becomes a very difficult thing to police. The one thing that, looking at here, should the platform be liable for individual users legally? I think that's a tough thing to hold them account to. There's just so many moving pieces to this. Morally, I think there has to be some oversight. I think the lack of oversight here is probably the biggest problem for a lot of us. Looking at this, and just because this man had a megaphone, he could have started worse with that platform. So I think there's a middle ground somewhere in between, and I'm hoping that the new CTO, who's now the new CEO, can find it with Twitter at the very least. Looking at Meta, I mean, I'm looking forward to a day where I'm not holding my nose when I talk about that particular company. It's honestly, it's going to take Mark making an exit, because I don't think that man actually has the scruples, in the truest sense of the word, to be a leader that people can stomach being on the platform with in the long term. I think he actually is the beginning and the end of a great deal of their trouble, and I think less Mark is actually going to be a good choice for everybody.
Now, I guess the question in that situation is Sheryl Sandberg a burned out husk of an executive at this point to even take over for Mark, and were they going to have to find someone else to do that, whether it's Boz and Andrew Bosworth or someone else? But that's a whole other. But
Brian Bosworth?
Yes,
Coming
Brian
out of retirement?
Exactly.
As you do.
Yeah.
Well, Gray, you showed up just in time for us to talk about a little bit of crypto. You ready? You guys ready?
I am. Yeah.
This way. Yeah. So Niantic, the makers of the apps, augmented reality apps such as Ingress and Pokemon Go and that Harry Potter one that no one used, they've got a new venture with a crypto debit card and an AR game where you can wander around and earn Bitcoin. So this is not unlike another app that I've had for a little while called Aircoins, but with maybe a little bit more public stature and some engineering and marketing oomph behind it here. Now, Tasia, I think in our previous discussions, both you and Will, I don't think either of you have any actual exposure to crypto at this point. Correct? Now, would a game where you can wander around looking at your phone instead of trying to capture Pokemon and have them battle? What if you were wandering on capturing Bitcoin? Would that get you into the crypto game?
Hard no for me. Will you?
That's a no for me, dog.
I stare at my phone too much as it is. I don't want this.
How else are you going to walk into traffic if you don't enjoy it?
Seriously.
Okay, so that's a pass through me. Gray, what do you think this sort of app represents for the mainstreaming of crypto, getting people, giving people the gateway drug to maybe start collecting? Because the few folks that I've gotten I've got a few folks interested in air coins, and they love the idea to be able to pull up their phone and have a map and have like all these little random coins, a little bit of Doge here and there, and Sky Coin
Yeah.
and Bad Coin and a few others. Like it's usually just marketing deals, but you can get free stuff, and who knows? Like in a couple of years, the value could increase quite a bit. At least maybe there's something in it for you rather than just feeding the algorithms and providing data for Niantic, formerly part of Google. Do you think this is an effective gateway drug?
It might be. I mean, I've had an app on my phone for a while called Coin World Hunt, which is something very similar. Again, same sort of thing. You wander around the world, there are boxes and keys and nonsense. It was a bit much for me. I didn't really, I don't know. I've run out of gas for that kind of thing. But I think for a lot of folks out there,
I see what you did
could
there.
very well be.
Gas.
Sorry. That's both on the ETH front and the 91 octane front. But looking at that, I mean, seeing how there is sort of the seek and you shall find behavior patterns for a lot of folks who have been into things like Pokemon Go, where the financial rewards haven't been there. It's been mostly about entertainment. Blending the two together are kind of interesting. We're starting to see a lot of play to earn games. Basically, before the inverse of that was pay to win, which we saw in a number of different types of applications where I give you my money, you give me something that is going to make me better in the game. Whereas with these, it's more, let me play the game and I will give you some money. Or you'll give me some money. And so these are kind of interesting to see. There are a number of different play-to-earn platforms that are launching in the next little while, some of which are crypto platforms that I'm invested in, full disclosure. There is the Flokiverse, which is coming to Terra, as well as Astrobots and a few other things, basically where people have been minting NFTs for this, and these NFTs are going to be your avatars in game, but inside those games when you play, should you win a round or whatever it is, you're actually going to have money deposited back into your account. The question I think for a lot of folks right now is we have both proof of stake and proof of work networks, and I think proof of work networks, Star Trek at one point was looking at auctioning off some NFTs which were on proof of work networks. They've since retracted that and brought that into proof of stake networks. And to give you some perspective, a proof of work NFT, you're looking at consuming the electricity that an average household consumes in about 6 days to mint and transfer that NFT. So that doesn't sit right with a lot of people. And it's one of the reasons why I've switched a lot of my crypto to proof of stake, because it does feel more ecologically inclined. In a lot of those cases, though, I think the real thing that's going to move adoption is going to be the easy transit between fiat, like everyday money, Canadian dollars, US dollars, and crypto. And so there are a number of different platforms that are coming to market right now where I don't really know if there's a great name for it. I'm almost thinking of like a seamless debit card, where the idea is that you hold crypto, and if you want to spend it, especially if they're stable coins are coins that are pegged to a given currency, like the Canadian dollar or the US dollar. They don't change in value. So it's not like you're holding these things expecting them to explode in value. They're things that we would actually use to pay for things. And so if you've got an account like that, you can now basically go down to the store and buy things with your crypto. And before it even hits that machine, it's already turned into Canadian dollars, US dollars. That kind of seamless transparency, I think, is going to be the thing that's going to make things work for a lot of people. There's one called Cash, which is on a couple of different networks, Terra being one of them, which is KASH. And they've actually also launched as a traded stock here in Canada on the CSC under the same symbol, KASH. I am not invested in them, full disclosure, but they actually have a program that's going to be usable for people like that. So I think
not invested yet.
Yet, yeah, for sure. I'm looking at them and thinking, yes, this is a good place to put my money, because I do believe that is going to be the thing that's going to make things work here. The gamified version, great. Like it's going to appeal to a lot of people. I mean, there are some people who are on this current video chat who I know did a little bit of war driving with with both Pokemon Go and a few other things, and that kind of fun, almost taking the online offline social aspect, I think is really, really cool. But mass market adoption, I think we actually have to show real world cases. And I think real world cases is my crypto can turn into real life objects like, a can of soda or an iPhone.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there when you mentioned seamless integration, having the rails set in where it's easy to get crypto in and out and actually do get some real world value for that. So Tasia and Will, just as an example, this isn't the app we're talking about, but this is Aircoins. This is just a few blocks away in North Vancouver. All the free stuff we could walk around together or drive around together and just get all those freebies. And then after you've burned all sorts of gas and increased your carbon footprint, you could then buy a can of soda like Graham mentioned.
Why don't we go on a walking tour of downtown Vancouver?
Yeah.
I'll come to North Van. We'll do one there. We'll do one down here. Sound good?
This sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, but I want to come.
We'll FaceTime you.
Well, gee, who here has been to Hawaii in the last few months, and who here is going somewhere else soon?
Me again.
Okay, so speaking of NFTs, we've got a couple little things, just a few quick stories to wrap up before we let certain people go get their beauty sleep. Will, there was one, and whose story was this? Was this yours, Tasia? The new mega yacht, $650,000 NFT yacht launched.
It's happened again. It's happened again.
For a game that hasn't even been released yet.
Remember when we talked about somebody bought like a mansion? Remember? It was like not a real, wasn't that what it was? Well, now somebody's bought a yacht and they spent $650,000 on it. Yikes. And the game isn't even out yet. And people are like, at this point, annoyed. Like, you should see all the people talking about this, like, really? Like, it's just like, oh god.
See, I deal with that when people buy a normal yacht too, though. So
at least it's a physical thing you can go on. And yes, that's bad enough, right? This is just ridiculous. Where do we draw the line? If
you're interested in yachts, check out our Momentous video from a few weeks ago on the $10.5 million Revolution 28R.
Now, how about this? If you bought the Revolution R and it came with a complimentary NFT for the metaverse, wouldn't that be cool? I'd buy that. I'm not the right person to talk about this. I'm going to opt out because I am buying a planet later this week. So I'm gonna stand down.
Well, why buy a planet when you could buy Gene Roddenberry's signature encoded in bacteria?
Right.
Because that's the thing that's also happening as well. Yeah. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around this whole thing. So I'm just going to read a little bit from this thing here. This is the first living eco NFT. So Gene Roddenberry's signature is now an NFT, and it's what it is. They implanted the signature, which he signed in 1965, into a living bacteria cell in the form of DNA code. And as the cell duplicates, it creates new copies of the NFT, over 1 billion in one night. Now, even though there could quickly be billions of replicas, the NFT is called El Primero, which means the first in Spanish. So now the bacterial cells are dormant, but they're working on freeze-drying the cells after 10 hours and reanimating them in the future, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this all kicks off December 2nd. Now, we've got a few trekkers. Great, you're gonna buy you want to buy a planet. Why don't you buy some bacteria in honor of the late Gene Roddenberry?
I don't know. This really bugs me.
Why? It's Desi Lee Productions that's. Oh, I see what you did there.
I don't know. I mean, trying to inoculate against this sort of thing is.
Oh, geez, stop! So, delete your account now.
I've been gone for weeks.
You got so much build up, so many pent up dad jokes.
Honestly, like fascinating exploration of science, applied science. Really, really neat, really interesting. Like, does this have a use? Perhaps not. But then again, stay with me on this one. It's the A word. It's art, which I think is kind of cool. I mean, they're boldly going where no one has cultivated before, I guess. But I mean, interesting. And so, I mean, Trek right now is I think almost bigger than it's ever been. Right, we've got a number of Trek series that are in production: Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks produced here in Vancouver at Titmouse Studios.
And Prodigy has started now.
Honestly, how good is that? It's beyond what I thought it would be. I'm very, very pleased with where that for a kids show. I'm entranced. But like looking at this, Star Trek has always made us ask questions of ourselves, of each other, and just looking at different ways that it's intermeshed itself with the zeitgeist. This one, I'm fascinated to see. Like, I didn't see a price on that, but if there's a way for me to get a copy of my own gene roddenberry bacteria, I'm listening. I'm listening.
And the rest of us can maybe see if we can make NFTs out of our yogurt.
Well, here's the thing: you just come on over, you bring a little bit of culture with you, and we've all got one. So
I never bring
All
the
of it.
culture.
No. All right. So if bacteria-based NFTs aren't your bag, how about first ever self-replicating organic nanobots? Question mark.
that sounds a lot like bacteria.
So yeah, so this is quite the story here. They've basically engineered these things called Xenobots 3.0 to go and gobble up this material and then create more versions of themselves that do the same thing. And this is cool and all. But I just imagine a world where they get out of control and turn the entire world into gray goo.
Gray goo, yeah.
Yeah, like, can we control them for good? Like, can we do this, but like, I don't know, attack COVID, or like do something that they're not gonna just like get out of control and then we're all effed. I don't like this.
They're so
It
cute
looks
though.
like
They
we
look
need
kind of
like
they look like
ghost-shaped
they're
things to.
Say what's that? Great.
It looks like we need ghost-shaped things to come after these things and kill them whenever they don't have power.
Oh, yeah, waka waka. And that's there's the whole Pac-Man kind of look to them. But the team's goal is to understand the self-reproduction and to learn how to control it, direct it, douse it, and exaggerate it. So hopefully while they're learning, they're doing it in a very, as they say, a tightly controlled lab environment to carefully
this is how
manage.
shit gets out of hand.
This looks like the Andromeda strain. Like it's in a base with a nuke at the bottom, and boom, you just hit the button if it's not going right.
In other science news, this is a neat video I stumbled across this week too. The first 3D printed artificial eye. So this is again pushing the envelope of 3D printing technologies. A neat little video here being shared online. I think it's great. I think the idea here is that they can produce these things much more quickly than the standard way they create glass eyes.
I'm not going to watch that. Oh my God. Goodbye. Good night.
But it really improves the accessibility of this sort of thing for folks that need that. Now, in the one example, the video clip, the color was just a little bit off to me, but I think that's something that they can continue to refine. But at the end of the day, we're talking about really increasing the accessibility here. And the number they mentioned, it was something like they can do 10,000, or they can fulfill the annual requirement of approximately 10,000 prostheses per year in the UK. Can you imagine? They need 10,000 glass eyes in the UK every year. So just imagine that, like, maybe 10 times that much in the US, for example. So these 3D printing is just continuing to get refined more and more. And maybe in 50 or 100 years, they'll be able to wire it up combine it with the other research that's being done, jacking into people's optical nerves. So helping destigmatize people that have had some sort of, whether it's a birth defect or an ocular injury. So some of them who are not only contending with blindness, but just the innate tendency that we have as humans to be a little put off by people that don't have like the symmetrical face, especially in the eyes, right? The windows to the soul. So I'm really excited by this sort of thing, even if as much as it grosses Tej out. Maybe that's why it excites me even more.
It's amazing. I have a hard time just even with my contacts. So like that, taking in and out an eyeball was a bit much. Coming in hot there, TJ. I could have used a warning on that one.
All in favor of a warning you can give next time? Say
yeah. The warning's called the warning's called the show notes. You all know where those are. So
shade thrown.
Will, if you could have a rapidly created 3D printed prosthetic of any kind, what would be your first choice? Keep it clean.
I don't know. I haven't really thought of the subject. I guess an arm.
Okay. Would it be a metallic arm? Would it be like extra strong, like Winter Soldier-esque?
Yeah.
I was flipping around looking at stories today, and I just realized I hadn't looked that closely before. Like, is it Cyberpunk 2077? Did they totally rip off Winter Soldier with that metal arm and one of the characters there?
Johnny Silverhand?
Is that who that is? Johnny Silver? Is that his
Yes,
actual
that's
name?
that's Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
Johnny Silverhand is his name.
Keanu, yeah.
It's
He
like
has a
Bodie
silver.
McBoatface.
His
Like,
name
come
is
on.
John.
Guitar.
You know what I would do is I would go with an extra thumb, like one on the other side.
Oh, there you go.
Right.
I knew it when I was in grade 4. I knew a kid in grade 5 who had an extra little digit there.
Oof.
His
Yeah,
name was Rory, and he could really whip a tennis ball. That's my story. And then just in time for Christmas, one of the probably most attractive things Microsoft has ever developed is Microsoft ugly holiday sweaters. This year's edition, I think they did some last year. This year's edition, Minecraft. Who's been naughty?
Minesweeper.
Minesweeper. Yes, Minesweeper. Blah, 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 blah. Minesweeper.
Yep.
Yeah. Hence the 1990 and 2021 on the scoreboards there, and that is as ugly as Windows 3.0 and 3.1 ever were. And there's
the hidden
Marquez
feature on
Brownlee
this
wearing
one.
one.
If I was to wear this and someone poked me in the belly button, I'd explode.
Boom. Well, it might take a few tries though, depending on where. Because if it's always in your belly button, I mean that's
It's not fun.
you can figure out how to win every time. So who's in for this? Anyone?
That's cute.
Okay, so let me put it to you this way, Tasia. If you could create a tech-themed ugly sweater, what would it be?
Oh, shoot.
Don't say Twitter.
I was going to say, well, I have my Twitter shirt on.
Gray didn't see this one. It's even cooler. Haha.
Nice.
Old school.
It'd probably be something to do with, like, editing.
Nerd.
I know.
Ooh,
but I don't know how to make it, like, cool.
Ugly sweater.
I know.
It's like a series of timelines with just proxy clips not found on them.
It's just the fucking... Sorry.
F-bomb. Someone's tired.
Merry Christmas.
Wrap
My
it up.
bedtime reminder went off, okay?
I hope Santa's not watching.
It would just be the spinning wheel of death from Apple, but that's the tree topper.
Fair. No,
Okay.
that's spot on. I mean,
I was gonna say the one that I want is based on the Apple Chicago font.
Oh.
Right, and maybe just like a string of moofs.
Move.
And then some, like
That's
some
a good
bombs
one.
and
And let me guess, Will, yours is just gonna be a whole bunch of Vestax mixers.
Well, that's not geeky tech. I guess it's kind of tech. I was going to say
tech. It's kind of analog. Oh,
I was going to say a broken JPEG.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. What's this?
Oh, nice.
Tractor S4. Very nice. Okay, enough of this nonsense. Tasia, you had a couple of fun things for us this week in your project department.
I did.
What were you up to? You teased one last week, and so
I
maybe you
did.
can just give us a quick recap on this, and then we'll move on to the other.
Yes. So I did a video last Thursday on the best macOS Monterey features, and it was a lot of fun. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say because I teased it. What came in at number 1? Does everybody remember? It's iconic. That's the hint.
Oh.
Guys, it's the Hello screensaver.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned that last week. Yeah.
Like screw the accessibility features.
Oh,
Screw everything else that's super
Someone's getting
important
canceled.
and functional. I just want the Hello screensaver.
I guess we don't even need to bother doing closed captions now, since you just alienated anyone who might be interested in them.
I'm kidding. Also, one of the ones I think is really good is the ability to just like quickly and easily reset your Mac now, just like you could like with like your iPad or your iPhone or whatever. It's like hallelujah, because like to trade in this last Mac that I did, it literally an 8-step process, and I was like, I'm gonna lose it. So, and I hadn't upgraded that one to Monterey, so that's why. But that's very exciting to me. So that was this video, and then today I finally put out another episode of Talk Techie to Me, my podcast. I was about 2 months on that. I hadn't put out a podcast. So I did a little quick tech roundup. So I talked about Jack, of course, resigning. Apple and Google got fined by Italy and over like user data stuff. You just have to listen. And then also something we've talked about before, which was the digital IDs from Apple, that has been postponed till 2022, but we don't know when.
So the
And
driver's
that is sad.
licenses, etc., into your Apple Wallet. That is a bummer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is a major bummer. So
They're probably just taking the time to get it right because there's all sorts of data security and privacy issues there, I'm sure.
yep.
Will, no beats from you this week, but hopefully soon.
Coming soon. Yeah,
we still got to enjoy the ones you shared with us last week. Gray, give us a little rundown what you've been up to the last few weeks and any other little side projects we should be aware of.
Yeah, so I've been teaching a search engine optimization and search engine marketing class for BrainStation. Tomorrow morning for the North Van Chamber, I have a webinar on how to make more of an impact this holiday with social media. And coming up in the next little while, I've got a couple of gigs that I'm DJing, but they're private, so no go. But I will actually have recordings of those sessions coming up. I think I've actually got one up since the last time I talked to you guys. So that's kind of neat. I'll share the link for that. And the really exciting news for me, which is not tech related, is that I get to see my parents for the first time in 2 years.
Nice.
Mom and Dad are coming out for the holidays,
Congrats.
so I'm very excited. So
they'll be
on the 20.
They will be so happy to see me. Awesome.
They will. They were asking about you actually, so.
I'm so happy for you.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Here's just a little thing on the screen from. We'll add the link to the show notes for your small business series, even though by the time people see it, it'll be too late for them. But North Vancouver Chamber of Commerce has the small business series, and they've all sorts of great little seminars for folks, and done in conjunction with Capilano University. So check out Gray's session there, and others like it. So great to have you back, Gray. Now, will you be back next week? Is the 64,000?
You better believe I will.
All right.
I'm so excited to see you guys again, and I will get this thing figured out. Chrome is actually working, but isn't anymore. So I'm going to figure out what's going on with this.
Gotcha.
We'll get it sorted.
It's good you'll be here because a certain other person won't be. So it's like, what's it going to take?
I'm glad we got to spend some time.
I know. Reunited, and it feels so good.
Getting misty.
No? Anybody?
So the best part about my class tonight was I didn't realize I had the mic on, but I had Christmas music blasting. And so as I was letting students in, I'm running around the house singing at the top of my lungs, and I come back and I'm like, y'all heard that, didn't you? Well, I guess, Mary, let's get going with class.
That reminds me, we're overdue for some karaoke. It's time to share some aerosols. Omicron style. So, thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Will, Tasia, and surprise appearance by Gray Williams. If you want to learn more about Momentous, you can find us momentous.tv, Twitter, even without Jack, twitter.com/momentous.tv, facebook.com/momentous.tv, instagram.com/momentous.tv. On YouTube, search my name and look for the Momentous playlists there. And all of you and everyone else, I hope your week is truly momentous.